Yo guys, Jonathan here. This is the breakdown of the iPhone XR versus the iPhone 11. Everything that's new and 5 potential reasons that I think might be worth the upgrade. Also, shout out to Tim Apple. Drop a like if you'd rock one of these because there is a limited run available now. Link is down below. Now, before I dive in, I want to throw this out into the universe. If you own an iPhone XR, I still think that's an incredibly solid phone, especially with the price drop. So if you didn't upgrade to the iPhone 11 or 11 Pro, I think you would be more than content because, true story, I am still on an iPhone XR and have not updated to the iPhone 11 or 11 Pro, and I think that should say something. With that said, if you're looking to sell your XR or trade it into upgrade, I think it's a bigger upgrade than most people think. The best way to look at it is if you took the body of the iPhone XR and then smashed all the internals from the 11 Pro inside, dropped it $50, and the end result I think is Apple's best phone in years. You of course now have dual cameras, which is the exact same as the 11 Pro and Pro Max. The only difference is you're missing that telephoto lens. The Apple logo is now right smack in the middle, which I think does look better, and there's now a handful of new colors this year. I will absolutely miss my blue. Like, I really like this color and it pained me to see it go, but I think the overall color palette this year as a whole will appeal to more people. In terms of reasons to upgrade though, without a doubt, I think the most appealing feature has got to be that ultra wide angle lens, which actually does a few different things. The first, of course, is the ability to take ultra wide angle shots like this, but when you combine that with Apple's Smart HDR this year, that's when you really start to see hardware working together with software. Speaking of software, working with hardware, I think auto adjust might be the silent MVP feature of the iPhone 11 lineup. Now, if you missed my iPhone 11 Pro Max review, I covered that pretty extensively, so I'll drop a link to that down below. But essentially what's happening here is when you're using your wide angle lens, or in this case with the 11, your only other option, the ultra wide angle lens is capturing information at the same time. So it's like your wide is doing this, your ultra wide is doing this, never missing a beat. And say you screw up your composition or you cut someone's face off, through intense math and honestly some sort of witchcraft, it's going to take all the data information from the ultra wide and stitch that together with the wide angle lens and somehow save your shot. It's pretty incredible. That ultra wide angle lens though just keeps putting in work. On top of those aforementioned features, it also captures depth, and that gives you the ability to not only capture portrait mode shots of objects, but also pets as well this year, which is something you cannot do on the iPhone XR. Next, the front-facing camera on the iPhone 11 is better across the board. That 12 megapixel sensor will give you the ability to take wide-angle selfies, and if you've missed my iPhone 11 coverage, when you rotate to landscape orientation, it's automatically going to switch into wide-angle mode, but if you want to do that in portrait orientation, all you got to do is tap these arrows. Portrait mode as a whole I think is better across the board, and also new with the 11 versus the XR, as you guessed it, slow motion video up to 120 frames per second, Slofies. Let's see if we can go one video without Slofies in the comments. Also new with the 11, and for the first time ever on an iPhone, 4K front-facing video. You can go all the way up to 60 frames per second or up to 30 frames per second with extended dynamic range, which is mind-blowingly good. So here we are on the iPhone XR, potato quality, 1080p, 30 frames per second because 24 was not an option on the XR. I'm looking at you, Canon. Bring back 24, please. Jokes aside though, the quality should look pretty good. Let's go ahead and hop over to the iPhone 11. We are now obviously in 4K with the iPhone 11, but just the overall width of that front-facing camera with video is nice as well. Next, while the iPhone 11 Pro and Pro Max flexed a little bit with that super Retina XDR display, damn it, Phil, the iPhone 11 quietly took one of the Pro's audio features, Spatial Audio. What it does is, one, gives you support for Dolby Atmos, so you're making some audio gains, and two, even though they are physically stereo speakers on the iPhone 11, it creates this virtual surround image where it projects things and shoots things left and right. It's kind of a mind fork, and while I wouldn't say it's solely a reason to upgrade, it is way cooler than you'd expect. Next, and again, something that's not just limited to the 11 Pro or the Pro Max and also makes its way to the iPhone 11 is night mode. By now the results are out. I think we can all agree night mode on the 11 and the 11 Pro is pretty damn awesome. And it's a classic example of Apple not always being first, but when they take their time and get it right, they get it right, and night mode is no different. Honestly, if you shoot a lot of low light or nighttime photography, that might be the biggest reason to upgrade. And then when you take things further and combine the iPhone 11 with something like a tripod that I featured in my best accessories video, that's when you can get to the next level stuff and whip out some shots like this. Shout out to my boy Farouk. No, but for real, that's a pretty ridiculous shot. So yeah, those are some pretty big upgrades from the iPhone XR, and I'm not done yet because there's better video across the board. 4K 60 frames per second isn't new on the iPhone 11, but what is 4K 60 with extended dynamic range. For me, I am all about 24 frames per second for life, but the benefit with 4K 60 with that dynamic range is the ability to slow that down in post and get some pretty breathtaking results. Also, when you're shooting in 4K 30 or 24 frames per second, stabilization and dynamic range is better across the board. Now, I think that also really speaks volumes for the iPhone XR, which held its own really well and further brings my point to where if you just stayed there and never upgraded, you would be more than content. Again, with the iPhone 11 though, when you compile all those features, it ends up being a bigger upgrade than you might think. So whether you sell your phone, whether you trade it in, I think if you do it through Apple, you end up paying like $300 in change, which isn't crazy considering you're not gonna have to deal with that shady guy off Craigslist, or I saw it on my Garage 56 on eBay who hits you with the refund request like 2 weeks later. Finally, you start to sprinkle in what I would call the Draymond Green features, those intangible things that don't show up on a scoreboard but make a huge difference. You get faster Wi-Fi, faster LTE, an extra gig of RAM, better water resistance, better battery life, and the end result is this really complete package. And if you're wondering why I haven't talked once about the A13 versus the A12, it's because I've talked about the A13 throughout the entire video. Everything cool with the iPhone 11 is thanks to that A13. We are past the point of just pure CPU speed, benchmarks, exports, finger tapping. It is so much more than that. Again, all this kind of just further hammers the point home that the iPhone 11 is the best iPhone for most people. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you have a second, speaking of iPhone 11, this is probably my favorite video that I've ever made. If you could check it out, it would mean a ton. This is Jonathan, and I will catch you guys later. Evans, do you like my shirt?
What does it say? Oh, that's pretty good. Can I buy it at a link in the description of this video?
You sure can, Evans.
Okay, I will definitely do that.
Thanks, Evans.
No problem.
Go build a PC.